Hi, I'm Topher White.
I'm Chrissy Durkin. We're from Rainforest Connection, and we're here to talk about our mission to harness the power of sound to protect and understand the natural world.
In the summer of 2011, I visited the rainforest of Borneo for the very first time. And as you can hear, it was the overwhelming sound of the forest that struck me the most. There's a cacophony of noise that completely overwhelms you, but occasionally some things stick out. For example, there's cicadas. This here is a hornbill, a very large bird. And then these are gibbons, these amazing large apes that sing to each other from great distance. But what I didn't realize at the time was that behind all this sound was actually chainsaws the entire time. Illegal logging throughout the world is a major scourge, and technology can play a role in stopping it. So here's our solution to Rainforest Connection. We try to stop illegal logging with technology, and particularly using sound as a medium to do it. So here's the idea. The moment a chainsaw goes off in the forest, the sound is picked up by a device in the trees, transmitted through the cell phone network that's there. An alert can be sent to rangers on the ground so they can show up and stop the loggers on the spot. This, of course, requires technology that can survive rainforest itself. So we take ARM-powered mobile technology, put it into a box to protect it with big solar panels inspired by the shapes of the trees themselves and powerful microphones that pick up the sounds of threats from kilometers in the distance. Something like this, in its first iteration in my parents' garage in Silicon Valley, could be put together just with off-the-shelf devices. Since then, of course, we've advanced quite a bit. And today, the Guardian looks like this, in the tops of trees around the world, listening for threats. And we're not listening to these things all the time. They are automatically picking out the sounds of threats. This is what a chainsaw sounds like through our system itself. So again, to remind you how the system works, the moment a chainsaw goes off in the forest, picked up by a tree, goes through the cloud to an alert on the ground for rangers so they can show up and stop people on the spot. That actually takes us to a real situation in the forest. So here we go to the Amazon. You can see in the Amazon, there's this ocean of deforestation, but these islands of pretty intact forest there on the ground. Those are not protected areas, so to speak. They're actually indigenous areas that are controlled by indigenous tribes on the ground. This one that you see, this red shape, is actually the Tembe indigenous territory, one that is about the size of Yosemite National Park, 2,500 square kilometers. This is the Tembe tribe themselves. And the Tembe tribe, about 1,500 people left. Really a logging scourge is really threatening this group. This purple area that you see here, when we met them in 2014, was entirely controlled by logging cartels, illegal settlers, and more. And the Tembe were confined to these areas just in the north and the south where they could be safe. And just driving from town to town, they would run across fully armed, fully stocked, brand new logging trucks, major cartels that are invading their territory. The only thing they could do was just continue and get out of there as fast as possible. It was clear they needed a little bit of help, and technology could play a role. So again, fortunately, the Tembe realized this was a fight for their survival, a fight for protecting the forest overall. So they trained 30 young rangers to protect this area, and they rose to the occasion. But 30 young rangers in an area the size of Yosemite is quite small. So technology plays a very important role in being able to make it work. With the technology you saw earlier, our devices we call Guardians, they had to be installed very high in trees. They could pick up cell service far away. The Tembe themselves could climb the tree. And here you see a young Tembe ranger actually installing a Guardian up in the treetop. From here, they can pick up chainsaw noises up to 1 kilometer in the distance. And this is kind of what that looks like. So when a chainsaw goes off, here's an example that you're listening to right now. Our system is able to pick it up and using AI, using CNNs, convolutional neural networks, we're able to pick out the sounds of chainsaws automatically. But this one's pretty obvious. Again, we're looking at a territory that's so large, thousands of square kilometers, that of course the sound of chainsaws is going to be very far away. So here's an example of AI being able to pick out a chainsaw that's much further away. Can you hear the chainsaw? Because most people can't. And the sounds of the forest really do drown it out. But AI can pick this out very, very well. Many times better than people actually can. And so this is how we're able to pick out sounds of chainsaws from a great distance. So this is what actually happens. This allowed us to scramble the rangers to get to the end of the road. And at the end of this chainsaw alert that you just saw, this truck was coming out of the forest, made it to the end of the road where the Tembe rangers were waiting for it to be able to seize the truck. They were able to, of course, destroy the truck, burn it, push the loggers out of the territory, destroy other equipment that allowed them to take control of this area again from the cartels. And that's what's really amazing. You have these rangers, these guys, any one of them can have a bigger effect on fighting climate change than dozens of engineers at a clean tech company. There's so much potential that they have, and we have to build tech tools that allow them to do their job better so that we can use them so that they can help us protect the planet that we all use. And in fact, this is where it really gets interesting. So we've heard about saving the rainforest for so long, but it turns out that 50 to 90% of logging in the rainforest is illegal. And up to a fifth of all the carbon emissions around the world every year come from deforestation. So if there's this much logging that's illegal and there's people that are on the ground that could stop it, this could be the fastest, cheapest way for us to fight climate change today. And of course, not all deforestation is illegal logging, but illegal logging is so profitable. People will go in there, they'll cut a road through the forest to get these trees out. And once a road is there, that leads to wholesale destruction of the forest. Within years, this entire area becomes deforested entirely. If you can stop the illegal logging, you can stop the roads. If you can stop the roads, you can stop wholesale destruction of the forest. And it could be, as we said, the fastest, cheapest way for us all to fight climate change today. But it all relies on those people on the ground, and building tools for them are what makes all the difference.
Since the beginning, this was Rainforest Connection's mission. How do we use technology to stop illegal logging? But we quickly realized there was so much more we could do. What's truly amazing about these soundscapes is not just that we can pull out threats. What's really special is the richness of what's inside the soundscape. Because of the nature of the arm-supported Guardian devices we were installing in threatened regions around the world, we were amassing what might be the largest amount of acoustic data ever collected. These Guardians are streaming continuously, and with that data comes the extraordinary complexity of sounds that make up life itself. As you heard from Topher earlier, there's layer upon layer of species calls that make up a soundscape. Since the forest is so dense, what you're hearing is almost all species communicating using sound. Birds, frogs, bats, insects, mammals are all chattering amongst themselves, greeting the day, warning each other of threats, and singing mating calls. Because of this, beyond anthropogenic threats, there's a deeper level of understanding made possible by the collection of acoustic data. There's no other type of data that truly allows us to understand the makeup of fauna, from the mountains to the grasslands to the rainforests to the oceans, the way acoustics do. Using this one data source, we can map out the fauna of entire ecosystems. Here are a few examples. In the Western Amazon, we have the great tinamou, the scaly-breasted wren, and the white-throated toucan. These are species in the rainforest, but animals in all types of ecosystems are making themselves known through sound. Using these real-time streaming devices, we're able to map out species distributions during the most rapid period of change in human history. Climate change, encroachment, fire, and human disturbances are causing a mass extinction, and the species that remain are quickly adapting to rapidly changing environments. By mapping this and understanding this, we will have the information needed to create educated response plans. The applications of this technology are widespread for conservation initiatives. Let's look at an example. Wildlife reserves in Asia are surrounded by highly populated settlements and cultivated agricultural lands. Habitat loss and fragmentation have led to increasing human-elephant interactions. Landscapes adjacent to reserves are high conflict zones, with elephants reported as the leading cause of crop and property damage. India houses the majority of the Asian elephant population, at around 28,000 elephants. And annually, over 400 people and at least 100 elephants are killed in India due to human-elephant conflict. Now, elephants communicate using infrasonics and low-frequency rumbles. Rainforest Connection has already developed the Guardian, a device capable of picking out a sound of interest from the soundscape in real time. By adapting our devices to record these low-frequency sounds and developing an AI model for elephants, all of a sudden, we have the first ever acoustic early warning system for farmers of elephant presence, making it possible to develop programs to keep farmers, crops, and elephants safe. We recently used our platform to create a labeled dataset of elephant calls, for which we found about 1,000 examples out of over a century or nearly 1 million hours of acoustic data. Here's what one call sounds like. The AI model we are developing as a result of this work will be deployed and tested in India in the upcoming months. In addition to this, we'll be able to do things like inform corporations of how to make their supply chains more sustainable by letting them know how their practices are impacting local fauna. Stop ship strikes of whales and dolphins in shipping channels using hydrophones. Build effective corridors for species as they change their distribution in response to climate change. Hear the alarm calls of monkeys when poachers are approaching, and understand the health of reed belts based on the presence of bird populations. The way in which we're doing this is by creating regional CNNs for biodiversity. These CNNs, or convolutional neural networks, are artificial intelligence models that make it possible to automatically detect hundreds of species from the soundscape. The end result looks something like this. Each of these boxes represents a detection of a species in which we can recognize their presence from all the noise. The first challenge to overcome is that a huge amount of data needs to be collected and labeled for species calls around the world. Bioacoustic scientists have been collecting and analyzing sound for a century, but have faced an incredibly time-intensive analysis process of manually listening to recordings. Rainforest Connection has developed a biodiversity monitoring platform to solve this, called RBMON. Using a tool called pattern matching, we can take one example of a species call and use it as a template to find all the matches within a certain threshold, using visual analysis within the spectrogram. Then, scientists can simply review these results, transforming a process that once took months to years into a few hours long exercise. We walk away with many labeled examples of species calls, and then use those to build an AI model. When we do this with many species, we can then automatically track the fauna across entire regions. The resolution and the scope of these insights is profound. Tracking and unveiling the vocalizations of any and every wild animal down to sub-second resolution across months to years. One recent example of this effort has taken place by Rainforest Connection across the island of Puerto Rico, where we sampled over 900 sites and built an AI model for biodiversity there. This baseline will be extremely useful as we move forward with conservation efforts in Puerto Rico. For example, Puerto Rico's only endemic parrot species, the Puerto Rican parrot, has been on the brink of extinction. A program is in place to release parrots that have been bred back into the wild. We're getting ready to install 30 guardians to monitor the release of these Puerto Rican parrots to track their location and behaviors so that we can better understand and protect them. These automatic detections also lead to automated, actionable conservation recommendations. Rainforest Connection is building a dashboard in which acoustic data can not only be analyzed, but transformed into conservation strategies. The goal is to make these insights available to people far beyond scientists. We can inform governments, NGOs, indigenous peoples, and companies of the best way to conserve the biodiversity in their area. So far, we have gathered acoustic data from 38 countries across 6 continents, but we have a long way to go in terms of both data collection and developing the tools for easy analysis. Rainforest Connection has the ambitious plan to scale ecoacoustic understanding globally. We're collecting and creating the largest ecoacoustic dataset in history that will capture vital biodiversity data at this moment in time, for which we can derive actionable insights that guide informed conservation efforts for today, tomorrow, and for decades to come. This is the beginning of an unprecedented era of ambitious scientific discovery and critical conservation work only made possible by recently developed technologies.
With climate change already underway, the natural world is undergoing a transformation not seen in the history of the human species. This moment must be captured and studied now, before we lose the opportunity for all current and future scientists to learn from it. But to accomplish this will require technology and ideas that have not yet been invented. Together, we must rise to the challenge, creating a global Rainforest Connection network that connects us to the furthest corners of our planet's wildernesses with deeper insights than any collection of human senses alone could provide. When combined with human action, we're effectively building a global nervous system for the natural world.
This mission will hopefully not only change our understanding of nature on Earth, but will give us the ability to help preserve it. Today's approaches simply cannot stand up to this massive challenge of acoustically mapping the world's fauna while simultaneously detecting any threats. We must continue to innovate to be able to accomplish this goal.
Using technology that already exists, we can expedite solutions to the world's greatest problems. The tools required to build the future are already available to us today. It's up to you, the developers and visionaries, to get started. This is how Rainforest Connection began and how it continues to innovate. we encourage everyone out there to think outside the box and come up with solutions with materials that are sometimes already sitting right in front of us. Thank you.